Hi, and welcome to Sexploration with Monika, a sex-positive feminist talk show about how sex is proof that God loves us and wants us to have fun. Today we're interviewing Marie Thouin, PhD, right relationship dating coach, and love insight. I heard that you're a researcher, so tell me more about that. What do you research? And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, Monika. It's so nice to be here in your beautiful new studio.
Thank you. We love it.
I am a researcher. I just finished my PhD and I researched the phenomenon of compersion.
Compersion.
Mm-hmm.
I love that concept. Tell us more about that. Tell us, like, for someone who doesn't know what compersion is. Because it's kind of almost a made-up word in a way.
It kind of is, really. Right. And that word was, that word emerged in San Francisco in the 90s. Right where we are. Yes.
Yeah.
In a community called Carista. So it was a polyamorous community. And they were experiencing this empathic joy for their lovers' other lovers. And they didn't have a word for that.
Because it's not something in our culture. That's not something that we're like, we usually think about jealousy. We don't think about the pleasure of watching your lover have pleasure. Usually we're like, we feel regret or threatened or some kind of fear, but to have it be a pleasurable thing is just beautiful and groundbreaking. But the mirror neurons are there as well.
Yeah. Well, at the base of it, compersion is about empathy.
Exactly.
It is about sharing somebody else's joy. It's about feeling into somebody's joy and having a positive interpretation of it as well.
Exactly.
So empathy is interesting too. Like that's something I talked about in my dissertation, is that there's the cognitive empathy, which is I can imagine what you feel and I'm interpreting this as a positive event. And there's the embodied empathy, which is I feel what you feel. And since you're feeling good, I'm feeling good too. So compersion can have different flavors also kind of along those lines.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and I think, every relationship, there's things that, are going to be, you might accidentally step on a landmine and suddenly feel something that you didn't expect in a negative way. But you can also feel things in a positive way as well. Like, I didn't realize that, watching... Like I was talking to someone who was running a party bus, and apparently, so he is watching his girlfriend make out with someone else, maybe the driver of the bus. Anyway, right? Yeah, and he's noticing that he's like smiling and enjoying it, and so like it was kind of like something that was a surprise, right? And I just think it's so neat that, sometimes it's beautiful when you step on something and it's like pops up a flower, and then sometimes you're like, gosh, I didn't know that I was going to feel jealousy when my partner let her have the tickets to the Tori Amos concert.
Oh my gosh, I would be jealous too.
Oh my god, I'm totally fine with him having sex with other women, but I want to. If someone's going to Tori Amos, I want to be that girl.
You got to draw a line somewhere.
You just don't know what's going to happen when you're working in physical reality, and so suddenly you're like, I didn't know that I could or would feel jealous, in these situations. So just today, I had a beautiful and interesting email from someone who is just starting to think around, like, could I do polyamory? She has always been monogamous. She was, raised very traditionally. She's not in the Bay Area. I think she's somewhere like in Colorado. And so she's really wondering, could polyamory work for me? And she has been dating this guy for, it sounds like, a year, and just, really thinking of going deeper, making their relationship bigger, moving in together, maybe even starting a family together. But she really wants to know, like, how do I make this feel safe for me? And then also, what to do when jealousy rears its green-eyed head. Do you have any tips and tools to deal with those feelings?
Absolutely. Actually, my research on compersion provides a really good roadmap for what you need to have in place just to have a good, baseline, good polyamorous relationship. And I'm going to use the word polyamorous and consensually non-monogamous sort of interchangeably here, even though it's not exactly the same. Polyamory is under the umbrella of consensual non-monogamy. And there's many ways to be consensually non-monogamous. It can include open relating, it can include swinging, it can include relationship anarchy.
Yeah, and all of those have their own distinct meaning. So if you want to Google them individually, I would recommend that because they really have a different flavor. Like relationship anarchy, to me, would feel scary. But polyamory, that's more like love-centered. Like each relationship is an experience of love. So each, non-monogamy, swinging, all of those different worlds, they mean a similar thing, but they don't have an identical expression. And, when you're trying to figure out what kind of polyamory or what kind of open relationship you're thinking about, that's definitely a good place to start the discussion, is how you define your relationship and what the rules are for you.
Exactly. I mean, even if you do pick one of those labels, you still have a lot of decisions to make with the consent and the trust and the communication of your partners and whoever else is involved and affected in that ecosystem of relationships. So it is an uncharted territory in a way where you have to be so intentional and so communicative that this is really the first thing that I would say to your listener who is emailing you today. I would say first you have to kind of wrap your mind around what type of relationship you would feel comfortable with and get on board with it mentally. And I know so many people who have been dragged into non-monogamy by a partner and they're not really on board with it psychologically, and that can cause a huge obstacle to not only compersion but just having harmony.
And triggers will come up along the way. When you are freaked out about something, I mean, any relationship is going to have triggers.
Right.
And then particularly a non-monogamous relationship, those become even more complex because there is no roadmap. There's not like the rules, when really there's not really the rules in relating and dating anyway. I mean, we want there to be kind of in our minds.
Well, and if you choose a monogamous relationship, you do have more of a template. Because we were raised with models, like oftentimes just in the media, we watch TV, we see models of monogamous relating. And so we think we have a map, and to some extent we do, because we have role models, but we don't have a map.
How are those working for those people anyway?
Yeah, like role models are not always great. I mean, we follow the road, even if it leads us to not so great places, but, I mean, really, it is an interesting analogy. Like, imagine being in a forest and you have a choice between going on a trail, and that might not be where you want to go, but the alternative is to go where there is no trail. Like, which one do you pick? They're both kind of scary in their own way.
I don't know. There's so many relationships end in divorce anyway. So it seems to me like, even though, I mean, you're always going to be inventing your own relationship with this person. And can you hang on to the roller coaster ride in the present moment that you're both going to experience? Can you stay connected even when your brain is screaming at you that this person isn't trustworthy or whatever? Like, how do you, like, wait, listen, is this my mind, or is this just some past trigger? You know, and can I be like, okay, stop, you know, let go, let the cortisols ebb out of your bloodstream and like really try to connect.
Yes. And that leads me to the second factor that, you know, someone who is considering non-monogamy should also consider. It's a sense of security within oneself. Because, like you said, you'll have to face a lot of triggers and a lot of obstacles in that mode of relating. And if you have a really strong self-relationship, which includes also self-care.
Self-care for the long-term win.
You will need it. You will need that kind of stability inside of you.
Bubble baths for you.
Yes, bubble baths, great walks in nature, on a trail or not.
You gotta be able to survive with yourself for the minute.
Yes.
Oh my God, especially if they're on a date. Like, what are you going to do with yourself?
Right. And also, you know, having a really great community around you will be another factor. And having people who are supportive of you being in a non-monogamous relationship. Because if you just surround yourself with people who are stench monogamous, when you have relationship problems and you go talk to them, they'll tell you, oh, no wonder you're having relationship problems. Because, yeah, because you're
That's
poly.
going to be that point of view. It's going to be their point of view. Or you're going to get kind of jaded from it.
Like
And
you
it-
said,
like you said,
I think
it's
what you bring
what
into
you
it,
bring
right?
into
If you
it,
go
right?
in
If you go in
damaged
damaged
and you're not
goods and you're not taking
yourself, and
you're not
doing the
doing the
positive,
positive
yeah,
thing.
aren't
Yeah,
you
aren't you kind of putting it out there?
That's what you're kind of
That's what
going to
you're
get
kind of
back in return,
right?
Right. I mean, that's also true in monogamy, but it's a little bit less complicated because you're dealing with one person at a time.
One-on-one versus the dynamic.
Exactly. You just, you know, like polyamory can be this amplifier. It just makes every problem, every discomfort, every trigger that you have just amplified. So it's extra important to have the resources and the dedication to doing your own work internally.
Exactly. So to me, it feels like almost like a, you know how a spiritual path will amplify all of the places that you are experiencing, like your wounds, you know, your previous, you know, the time that you hurt, you know, that you got triggered when you were a kid, and you know, now that means something to you. You know what I mean? Like now you're super upset, and you can't even explain the reason why. You're like, you should just know, you know, and that's not, you know, how would they know, you know.
Right. So the next factor is then security within the relationship. Because, of course, things are going to come up, and if you have a safe container within your main relationship and within all the relationships, you know, that you have in your poly ecosystem, polycule, then you will at least be able to feel safety in that container. You'll be able to feel trust, and every relationship has its own optimal level of communication in terms of quality and quantity. So you have to figure that out. You have to figure out, what do I need from my partner in terms of communication for me to feel included in what they're doing? Because compersion also is about feeling included. If you're going to feel empathy for somebody else's joy, you have to feel like they're allowing you to participate in it. If you feel like they're doing their thing over there and keeping secrets from you, you're not going to be able to participate. You're going to feel excluded. You're not going to have empathy. And you're going to have more of a reason to feel afraid and to feel unsafe. So whatever you need to do with your partners to create that sense of inclusion is going to be really critical. to having a good time in a polyamorous relationship.
So communication is not only key in all relationships, but especially in this, and you're adding another dynamic. So
It does seem to really turn up the volume on all of the little meters, like spiritual growth, and you really have to be really clear about what you want, your needs and boundaries, and I mean, it's just an amplifier.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it definitely seems like it's under a microscope
even more so.
Yep. Yeah.
With yourself. This, I didn't know if I introduced you, Paul Brumbaugh, from The Edge of Insanity. And also, this is his new studio here, The Edge Studios. Thank you so much for being my token straight guy today. So today,
Hi, I'm in the background, guys.
yeah, no, it's wonderful to have you here. And so, yeah, we're talking about dating and relationship coaching. Your thing is called Love Insight.
Yeah.
Tell me more about Love Insight.
Mm-hmm. So Love Insight is my coaching practice, and I coach people, across the spectrum of relationship orientations and sexual orientations, ages, nationalities, etc. And I coach people who mostly are in the dating pool, wanting a new relationship, but also already in a relationship, navigating some challenging terrains. And everyone is so different. When people ask me, like, well, how do you work? What's your formula? I have to say I don't have a formula that applies to all my clients, because everyone is unique. And the core principle that I always bring them back to is intentionality. What does that mean? What does it mean to be intentional in relationships? To me, it means being able to disentangle the voice of society and external authorities and external expectations from...
And your shame.
And your shame, yeah. Where does shame come from? Usually it comes from that kind of gap that might be between what you really want, what your desires are, and what you've been taught that you should want or should not want. Creates so much friction. So being able to have a sense of inner sovereignty and have our own back and say, oh, my desires are okay, I'm actually going to be in a state of wholesomeness with my own desires takes a lot of courage, and that's why having a coach is really useful and important, because that coach can actually validate, like, yes, it's okay to be you. It's okay.
Very empowering.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's okay to be turned on, right? And it's okay to feel your pleasure and feel joy. And, I think a lot of people might get freaked out about especially having this relationship be more than just a fling. Like when you start inviting other people to the Christmas party and this is my partner and this is my other partner, sometimes it, especially when you're not in the bubble of San Francisco, things can take some navigating.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, right. I think that relationship diversity is the next frontier in terms of sexual liberation and inclusion. I mean, we have done a great job, and it's not done, but with the gay movement and the LGBTQA+ movement of including people based on their sexual orientation and preferences. But when we bring in non-monogamy, it's still a major trigger for a lot of people who have done that work of being very inclusive in other categories, but I feel like monogamy is one of the next frontiers that we can cross as a society.
Is it because of society rules for so many years that it's kind of just embedded into our psyches for the most part? Is that why we're having a difference in breaking those norms? What do you think it is?
I think part of it is, of course, ingrained beliefs, but I also think that jealousy is one of the hardest human emotions.
You saw me just roll my eyes. I just had a big body count, didn't I?
Wow. Very telling.
Because I felt my eyes lift and turn to the side, and then I saw yours, and you're like, wow, okay.
on the same page.
So, okay.
But I want to talk about
jealousy,
jealousy particularly because jealousy isn't one emotion. It's a collection of emotions, and we say, okay, it's really, fear that my partner might leave me for someone else. It could be resentment, it could be anger, it could be a lot of different feelings, and we're just saying, oh, I feel jealous, but the emotions could range to a lot of different things. I mean, it could be pain, it could be, there are a number of emotions that are associated with jealousy.
Those emotions really just wreak havoc on your mind and your body and
All of
everything
them are
else.
painful, generally.
I mean,
Yes.
look at that. You were just saying in my eyes.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, she's like a puppeteer.
Look at the pull the strings on this guy.
And that's the truth about relationships, where there's this new model where the possibility is this beautiful thing of feeling pleasure for your partner's pleasure, but then how do we get there when we are so worried about being hurt, or that our partner is going to find someone more fun than us, and get that new relationship energy going, and then bail. That can be a huge and horrible fear.
Absolutely.
How do we deal with that fear?
Well, we don't go from 0 to 100.
All in one. That might be wise.
I mean, some people might be able to do it, but most people who do come from a more monogamous conditioning background, they create relationship agreements with their partners. So they start small. They might, start with a lot of conversation. Some people talk about opening their relationship for years before they actually do it or do anything with somebody else. Some people's first steps into non-monogamy might be swinging, where you go out and you meet another couple and then you do a swap on the same night in the same physical space.
And you're all together, you can see the facial expressions, there's no one behind your back.
Right, and you go with the intention of not falling in love with somebody else. Maybe you don't date them, it's more of a categorization
Just
of
one
sex.
night.
Versus in loveness.
Just play.
Right. So that can make people feel more safe. Some people might say, okay, it's okay to kiss or to make out with somebody else, but no sex. Or,
Or it's okay to have sex, but no kissing.
That would be the COVID protocol.
Well, yeah.
There's a rainbow of protocol.
Well, yeah. The pandemic has really brought a lot of those, right? It's like
Also that.
all the dating websites now are like, it's condom is optional, mask is mandatory, and it's like, really?
Oh, no, it's
Where have our priorities
Well,
flipped?
Have you heard
If you choose to
top to bottom,
decide and
Don't
negotiate,
go there.
it's all, the world is your rainbow. You just have to negotiate it.
And I like mine.
whispering.
Yeah, exactly. Purple sprinkles, thank you.
Have you heard about the Canadian recommendations during the pandemic that you should be having very limited sexual encounters with your partners, including perhaps using glory holes?
I saw the disclaimer.
I didn't realize that was a thing.
I did see the disclaimer below a glory hole.
Really?
No.
Wow.
I'm the token straight.
Oh, okay. But oh my goodness.
That came from the Canadian
Canada.
Health Agency. Everyone was, oh my gosh,
But
having
if you're
such a ball
safe,
on
you're
Twitter.
safe, right? Like if you're in a safe relationship and both of you don't have COVID, you just get to, like that's the safe part. Is you are having safe sex with each other.
Right, but when you start thinking about like a polycule and different
Sure.
different
But
relationships
was the Canadian
that can
government
be.
even bothering to think about the polycule?
I don't think they're there yet. I'm writing them emails.
You should. You should. I mean, it's okay if you really tell people to have a glory hole if you're having a polycule, but I think everybody else just gets to, go for it. And I mean, jeepers. What is? I mean, that's what you're supposed to do in the pandemic is make a bunch of babies. I think that's what the birth rate really went up. And a lot of people were, people were saying, okay, now is the good time to have a baby because we have to work from home anyway.
But the numbers went down.
Oh.
Really?
Numbers for
not in your market,
not in your department.
We can't get everyone's on baby leave, so yeah, we can't.
Oh no, but I meant just in general. They've said in the last few numbers, our numbers.
You mean the numbers of
people having babies? No, people having babies.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
They have dropped, and they blame a lot of it on Netflix and chill. Because people are watching Netflix and then falling asleep. And then the next thing you hear is turn over, you're snoring. or the door slamming because they left.
Oh, so romantic. But
and I'll have to pull those numbers up, but I'm not lying to you. Go ahead.
We
need numbers.
But it really, I think it really depends. I think that's like the whole pie. If you were probably looking at certain relationship groups, those numbers probably differ a little.
Sure.
I just don't know where they land in this slice of the pie.
Yeah, so I imagine. I mean, in some ways, we're just getting off track. So let's think about like when people are trying to open up their relationship and thinking about like, what do I need to explore in myself to figure out what will help me feel safe in this relationship. So think about our listener and our really excellent question in Colorado, and think about like, okay, what does she need to think about to help her. I mean, she's been in this relationship for a year. She really thinks this might be a great guy. He's just seeing other people. So far it seemed safe. It's been a little bit over a year. What are some of the things that she needs to ask herself, or what are the conversations that the two of us need to have?
So again, first wrap your head around what kind of relationship you want. What do you think would be an acceptable relationship agreement to begin with? So like negotiating, right, like to even be really specific. So if I'm going to go on a date with somebody else, or if I'm gonna even just go on a dating app, like what kind of communication do we need around that? And over communicate at first is better than under communicate.
Is the way to go mostly. I mean, I have never seen any over communication actually. Really?
I mean, if it feels like too much, you can always reduce it, but if it is not enough, it's gonna.
If it's too much information, you're like, oh, I didn't need that. No worries.
Or maybe next time, like, don't tell me as many details about your sex date. I don't really want to know all of that.
Although for me, I totally want to know.
There you go.
I want to know all the gory details, how fun it was, how many orgasms she had. I mean, even if I'm like, I never get to have that many orgasms, then I still want to know, just for science.
For science, just your tally. Let's go to the tote board and see how many.
Well, and, it's pleasure. So at least someone's having some, and, a lot. And so much is possible in the field of human sexuality. Like it is possible to have an orgasm just from breathing, and multiple orgasms, all the things. So
that's my favorite way, by the way, is when I'm breathing. I need to be breathing. I like my partner to be most of the time too.
Well, breathgasms really are a thing, but in any case, I mean, so there's
that's sensitive.
Well. So they were in an MRI machine and like no stimulation, able to have an orgasm just from their mind, just from the power of their mind. But they're experienced meditators and very sexually open, and that took years of practice before they got into that MRI machine. But it is a possibility. So the possibilities are endless, but what do you want for your reality? You know, you get to decide, especially in the context of this relationship, especially in the dream that you're creating with this other person. You know, like, what do you know, the feelings that you want to have, the communication that you want to create between the two of you, and you know, also, you know, how open do you want to be with the other people in the relationship? There's kitchen table polyamory, and I think it's a model that's really lovely, where, you know, you can open up the relationship and be friends with the other people involved in the polyamorous relationship, because it makes the community bigger and it makes the connections bigger. You know?
Yeah, that's actually another factor that came out in my research as promoting compersion, is having a positive rapport with your metamors. And the metamors are your partner's other partners. So if you have at least a positive outlook on them, you don't have to be best friends with them, but at least find them a positive addition to your partner's life. That will definitely stimulate compersion, or at least, you know, harmony in the relationship. So that's not something you can always control. People will always tell me, I have coaching clients who come to me and they're like, I hate my metamor. What do I do? Like, they're an asshole. They don't treat me well, or I think they're a bad influence on my partner. That can be a very tricky situation, because when we're interconnected like that, that person is in your life, and you might not want to tell your partner, oh, you can't date this person because I don't like them. But, you know, it's tricky.
It is going to affect you, at least your mental state when you're hanging out with them, and then how do you deal with hearing about them, right?
Right. So I would also say compersion is not always possible. There are situations where you might not be able to feel it, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or a bad poly person. I've heard so many times people say, like, oh, I don't like the concept of compersion because I don't really feel it, and it makes me feel like I'm a bad poly person. So I find that sad.
Shame and blame yourself. That's not going to help you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very contextual. Like, whether you experience compersion or not, it will depend on all the factors I've already named, as well as, do you find that there's benefits for you in that poly relationship? So do you find that, oh, because my partner is dating this other person, my life is enriched. My life is enriched socially, sexually, emotionally. It allows
least they get their needs met.
Right. Maybe I'm, really happy that they're getting some of the needs met that they have that I might not want to. Exactly.
Yeah. I can't dance like that with an ice cream cone in the,
Or maybe I don't like to go dancing at all, and my partner is going to stop bugging me to go dancing because they can do it with this other person. Great.
Right.
Yeah.
All of the different things, like, I don't want to do BDSM scenes, and then they get their BDSM cherry licked sometimes.
Exactly. It
By
can
a
be
consummate professional.
That's in there, in the technology or the terminology. It says, cherry licked.
All of it can be negotiated, and it can be a win-win. Like, it takes, it's an experience that you can offer your partner without you having to be everything.
Right. And that's, wow, what a load off.
Right?
Right? And so doesn't that take a lot of the pressure off and make things fun for you and your partner?
Well, as long as those date nights, you can keep the mind weasels from coming after you. So the mind weasels are, when you're feeling low and you don't know what to do, and your mind just goes over and over and over the same terrible thoughts. So how do you deal with the mind weasels in polyamory? What are some tricks?
So I have clients who will not just stay alone at home if their partner is out on a date. They'll go out with their friends or with their own date. They'll go out and do something fun. So that's one way to diminish the mind weasels. I have clients who will listen to a podcast about non-monogamy, just like what we're doing right now, just to keep their mind in a place that's positive and constructive. I also have clients and friends who actually really like to sit with their difficult emotions and face them and work with them and just really look straight up at the jealousy and the fear. Yeah, exactly. Just really feel it, investigate it,
Don't try to hide
befriend
from
it, embrace it, and be able to, maybe go for a walk or take a nice shower, do something to kind of release that emotional charge. Yeah, exactly. So it can be a great opportunity to do some really deep work when the weasels come.
Yeah, and especially thinking about, I have been thinking about the inner aspect method, which is when you think about like, okay, I am very reactive right now, so maybe I have experienced a situation like this that was an early trauma. So how long ago was it? Was I a kid? Was I a teenager? Is this like the rebellious teen coming up? And really thinking about like, okay, my emotional reaction is so huge right now. Like, what does it really mean? And is it coming from kind of an earlier trauma? And so you can start to think about like, okay, this trigger really isn't about this situation. It's about something that happened to me a long time ago, and try to dig in. And it's not about them, and it's not about now. Like trying to unpack it a little bit and get some air.
Right. And that's when also having a therapist or a coach can be really critical, because that might be really heavy duty material that you don't necessarily want to be exploring when you're alone at home and your partner is out on a date. That might be a little much.
Maybe those mind weasels need to go. You need to go get some ice cream with a friend.
Yeah, exactly. You have to take care of yourself, and know how much is healthy to manage all at once. Again, it's, you don't have to go from 0 to 100.
Know your inner weasel.
Well, or
Just saying. Feed it, nurture it. It likes ice cream.
it might.
I know.
It might like some candy, but not too much. You don't want it to be a high on sugar mind weasel.
Right.
Those are the worst kind. Those are the worst kind. So
Froyo weasel.
Healthy treat weasel.
Right?
Yes.
So we're thinking about this listener and some good takeaway points. So this relationship has been going on for a little bit over a year. What are some situations that might be, if you're not in a bubble like San Francisco, are there poly meetups? What are some of the good things to Google and explore to see about like how you might feel?
Yeah, that's a great place to start, is to attend a poly meetup online. If you just go,
they have Zoom now.
Exactly. If you go on meetup.com, you can Google all of the non-monogamy meetup groups all over the country, and you can visit really any one of them. It doesn't matter where you live now, because they're mostly all online. And then you can have great discussions. People will really understand you and welcome you with open arms and tell you, hey, we understand, you're not alone.
And, a lot of people are coming from very monogamous backgrounds, and just like, I don't know, this sounds neat, I really like this person, I feel a real connection here, can I do that? What are some of the things that I need to really think about?
Right. Also, Facebook groups can be great. I'm part of a lot of different polyamory support groups on Facebook, and people regularly post questions like, oh my gosh, my partner just went on a date and all of these weasels came out, or maybe they did something that I felt might not have been respectful, but I'm not sure if it's me or if it's them. Like, what do you guys think? And then people comment, and it's a really supportive environment, especially for someone who doesn't live in an urban center are like us, where there's a lot of support right around. Yeah.
Yeah, those poly potlucks, man.
Mm-hmm. They're
So
great.
cute. I know.
The meat in eat.
Well, and I mean, it was such a community. Oh, you mean me?
Oh, hey now.
Thank you, Paul Brumbaugh. He'll be here all week.
Try the pork. Or lasagna or whatever your bag is.
Pork. Okay.
We value diversity.
Now who's the comedian?
I know. So we're here at Sexploration with Monika, thinking about polyamory and talking to Marie Thouin, and dating and relationships can be so, interesting and complex. I'm just thinking about, it seems like every relationship must have its own way. Like, there's no one way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And, we're talking about monogamy and non-monogamy. I just found out about a beautiful word that I'm in love with, and I'm officially adopting for myself. It's called novogamy. My dissertation advisor from my PhD came up with that word. It's the idea that you don't have to pick a side forever. You don't have to say, I'm pledging allegiance to monogamy for the rest of my life, and that's going to be it. Or pledging allegiance to non-monogamy. You can novogamy, Novogamy.
Is it like a metamorphosexual?
I don't know. What is that?
Metamorphosexual. Your sexuality is always changing.
I guess, yeah. It's kind of like that idea. Novogamy.
Novogamy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Nouveau mean.
Oh, nouveau. Nouvogamy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, novo in Spanish is new. So it's kind of like a new form of,
Monogamy.
But our sexualities... Well, and you think our sexualities are changing always from birth to death. I mean, it's not like we're anything fixed.
Right.
And that's what you're saying. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I don't need the same thing for my love life right now as I did when I was in college or when I was in my teens. So we have different developmental stages in our life, and we will grow from different relationship styles. So the idea of just being in tune with ourselves and with the people who are around us and give ourselves the permission to change and ebb and flow with life and transcend that kind of duality of I either have to be poly or mono, it can be extraordinarily liberating. And because the label monogamy doesn't always fit, and the label polyamory doesn't fit either for so many people. They would never identify as polyamorous, but they don't want to restrict themselves to monogamy either. So it's nice to know that we can transcend the binary.
Yeah. Sexuality is oftentimes, Sexploration with Monika is oftentimes about transcending the binary, because there's so much to explore when you're not limited by an either or. Mm-hmm. I mean, and we are not either or, right? Consciousness isn't an either or, and then our lives are not an either or, and even with gender and sexuality and orientation and behavior, and all the complexities of sexuality, sometimes sometimes you like a nut, sometimes you're like an almond joy. That's so weird.
Sometimes you want ice cream, sometimes you want... I don't know.
Yeah, and it's a behavioral, situational, and sometimes the situation is, a chateau in France, and sometimes it's the back seat of your car, hopefully with a lot of fog.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice to be fluid.
Sometimes time the fog is just on the interior of the car from the breathing. But, you know.
Well, and like you said earlier too, so it's not only are individuals very unique in themselves, but so are these relationships. And so each one has its own arc, its own way of, and who knows when that's going to change. And so again, it sounds like communication.
Those are my favorite words.
Right. One of my favorite quotes from Esther Perel is
mating in captivity.
Yeah, I don't know which, if she wrote that in a book or maybe I just heard that in an interview, but she says, like, most of us will have at least 3 major relationships over the course of our life. And some of us will have those relationships with the same person. But don't expect that one relationship iteration can last a lifetime, because we're constantly changing, our partners are constantly changing. We will have to reinvent and redesign our relationships many, many times over the course of our lives.
Well, and that's funny because when you were saying that, I kind of laughed to myself a little bit. You always think of those people that get married, then divorced, and then get married to someone else, and then go back and marry the same person they were married to previously. And it's like I know of one person that got married to the same person 3 times.
No.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I remember when they said after that, this is it. If I made a mistake this time, I'm in it. And I'm like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm glad that individual's significant other wasn't but it's kind of like, it's not that I'm settling, it's just like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Please be with me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, you do probably know that person on that 3rd try.
Yeah, you know a lot more than you did on the first one,
right? And we do change a lot in our lifetimes.
Right.
And learn.
Right. And so maybe it's not just, we've all changed. The situation's changed. The time has changed. It's a timing thing.
So cool. Well, do you have anything final to say to our listener who's thinking about, like, is polyamory right for me?
Try it.
Try it. You might like it.
You might like it. You might not, but at least you'll know.
Right.
Try it with someone that you feel safe with and someone that you love.
Yeah, and I think, the meetups online, I think that's a really wonderful addition, that the pandemic, even before a few years ago, we wouldn't have so many online polyamory meetups. So that's a great resource.
Absolutely. And there's amazing books out there, like Polysecure by Jessica Fern, The Ethical Slut, of course. There's a lot of really great podcasts. So there's a lot of different ways that we can educate ourselves and learn more before we take the actual dive into it.
Oh, well, I mean, you can always even just being in that relationship, if you are, connected to, I guess moving in is kind of one way of diving into that relationship. But, being in a relationship and continuing the conversation and thinking about it, I think, I think that there are a lot of ways to just stick your toe in. And maybe don't get rid of your old furniture. Just don't keep a little bit of yourself, but go as gradually and do what feels right, like, your gut.
I mean, it is a balancing act between love and freedom, always. So create safety and create excitement. Try to have a little bit of each.
Yeah, we do like excitement, don't we? Like both the safety and comfort, but also the newness and the thrill and that, sympathetic, like, thrill,
Yes. I mean, it's so interesting. Well, maybe one last thing. I know we're about to end, but it's really common for people to feel both jealousy and compersion at the same time. part of it is this kind of activation of the nervous system when we know our partner is enjoying somebody else. And it's totally normal to feel both. Don't expect that it's going to be one thing. You know, if you're going on a roller coaster, you're going to have fear and you're going to have fun. Like, it's a package deal. So, yeah.
Oh, fun. That's so great. Marie Thouin, relationship coach, thank you so much for coming on Sexploration with Monika.
Thank you. That was so fun. Thank you,
my
Monika.
pleasure.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Paul Brumbaugh with The Edge of Insanity. And where can people find your book and your work? And do you have a book yet?
Not yet. I do have a PDF dissertation, 500 pages, that people can download for free on my website, which is whatiscompersion.com. So that's my research website. People can read the blog and read my dissertation. And if they're interested in my coaching, people can go to loveinsight-dating.com. And there you can sign up for a 30-minute free introductory session to experience a little bit of my coaching and see if we're a great fit to work together and go on this journey of intentional relationships.
Oh, yes. It is about, does this feel right? You know, what are my intentions? What do I want?
Right.
I mean, that's the big question. Who am I? What do I want? Who am I? What do I want now?
Mm-hmm.
Not who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to feel?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
What do we want?
Yeah, in my
When do we
body.
want it?
now. Obviously. Well, thank you so much for coming on Sexploration with Monika.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
You can always find more podcasts at sexplorationwithmonika.com.